It is my pleasure to welcome you to Northern Kentucky History Hour. I am your host for tonight, Mary Jane Calderon, joining you from my office at Behringer-Crawford Museum. Also joining me by the power of Zoom is BCM Visitor Services Associate and my co-host for the evening, Heather Cook, from her dorm in Wooster, Ohio, and our lovely presenter for the evening, Jeannine Kreinbrink. So thank you ladies both for joining me. Northern Kentucky History Hour is a project of Behringer-Crawford Museum, Northern Kentucky's history museum, that would not be possible without support. Thank you to all of our sponsors, including the City of Covington, Kenton County Fiscal Court, ArtsWave, Kentucky Arts Council, Northern Kentucky Sports Hall of Fame, the Carol Ann and Ralph V. Hale Jr. Foundation, and our members. If you're not yet a member of the museum, please consider joining for access to discounts and exclusive programming. Learn more and join at bcmuseum.org. We would love to hear from our viewers tonight, so if you have a question or comment to share, please type it in the chat or the Q&A feature, and I will be sure to get to those at the end of the presentation. Let's meet tonight's speaker. Jeannine Kreinbrink is the president and senior partner at K&V Cultural Resources Management, LLC, which she co-founded in 2011 with Doug VonStrohe. She has combined a career in cultural resource management with conducting educational and public programs in archaeology, preservation, and history. Her archaeology career began at NKU, volunteering at BCM, where she has been Associate Archaeologist since 1981. She began a full-time career as an archaeologist in 1986, working on urban archaeology in Covington. Jeannine obtained her MA in 1992 from the University of Cincinnati and has worked as a professional archaeologist ever since. Jeannine serves on the board of directors for the Friends of Big Bone. She helped found and served on the board of the James A. Ramage Civil War Museum, and also taught as an adjunct professor to the anthropology and history departments at Northern Kentucky University from 1997 to 2014. Currently, she serves as a registrar for the Register of Professional Archaeologists. So thank you so much for joining us tonight, Jeannine. Now, before we get started, there is a quiz question tonight. So the first respondent to enter a correct answer in the chat or on Zoom or on Facebook Live wins a Northern Kentucky History Hour prize, and most importantly, bragging rights. So tonight's question is, how old was the log when cut that will be displayed in the Elsmere City building? So this is from the log house we're discussing this evening, correct, Jeannine? Is Jeannine there?
Sorry, I tried to unmute and it wasn't letting me.
Okay. So we lost you. I thought we lost you. Okay, so that again is, how old was the log when cut that will be displayed in the Elsmere City building? So everyone go ahead and leave those answers in the chat. And then Jeannine, if you are ready, Heather, we can stop sharing our screen and you can go ahead and get started. So thank you very much.
All right. All right, and here we go. Well, thank you everyone for joining us this evening. We're going to do a little whirlwind tour of historic preservation and architectural documentation and talk some about what we believe to be the history of this house. And you can see here, I don't know if it's on your left, the white farmhouse is how we found the house when we first went out there to do a survey of the property, and the photo of the log house shows what was uncovered during this documentation process. All right, this is just a long view of the setting. It's Garvey Avenue or Garvey Road running in front of us there. Then you can see the farmhouse up on the hill with the modern farm buildings. All of the buildings around it are modern, post-mid 20th century farm buildings. None of the original other buildings were left around the house itself. Here we can see, kind of get oriented to where we are. Here is Florence. Elsmere's kind of up off the top of the screen. Whoa, here we go. This is New Buffington Road. Here, this is 25, Route 25. Here is Garvey Avenue. Hold on, I'm trying to get, I can't see it because I got all this other stuff on my screen. There we go. This is Bullock Pen Creek, which runs over that way. And comes, headwaters are up here in Elsmere, which is up here. This black outline is the actual project area. This is the property that we did both an archaeological survey of the whole property, and then we documented all the above ground buildings on it. And here you can see an aerial photo. Here's Garvey Avenue coming out of Elsmere here. We're still in Elsmere, and it runs down and meets New, down here it meets New Buffington Road. Here's the log house, farm complex. And then the creek is running across the top of the property. This is just a close-up showing the house number one, and then all the other buildings. This is a little house in the back, garage, another garage, and a couple of barns. And here's Garvey. And this is reconstructed or changed Garvey. Garvey Avenue used to run a little bit closer, and a driveway to the house used to run up there. There's a nice view of the house from a different angle. And if you can see the break in the roof line, I've got a better picture here in a little bit. So the log part is over here. And this is an addition, and then a chimney on each end. And when I first went out there to take a look at the house and take pictures of the buildings in order to document them prior to development, I walked up on the front porch. Then I was looking at the windows, and on this side over here, if you can see my arrow, the window well was at least a foot deep. And the window wells on this side were only about 6 inches deep. And I stood there and I looked at it and I said, this is a log house. So I called my client and I said, I really would like to talk to the property owner. And so I talked to the property owner, and they confirmed that there was indeed a one room over one room. So one room here and one room on the second floor that was built of hand-hewn logs. Here's another picture looking at the front, and here you can clearly see the break in the roof line. The log house ends where my arrow is going up and down, and everything on this side is an addition, and you'll see it has 2 front doors into the house. And so we were allowed to take off at that time just one corner of the vinyl siding, and you can see the log in here underneath. And based on that, we started doing some additional research on the property. All right, so let me stop for a minute and talk about the process and what's involved with having to document and do something like this. So this property was sold for development. And you all know, probably if you've been back, they're building big box warehouses and distribution centers back at that end of Garvey and off of New Buffington. The way it works is if a project has to have federal involvement in it, and in this case, they had to get permits from the Corps of Engineers for disturbing and impacting streams or waters of the United States. Part of that process involves doing an archaeological and historic survey. So we go out and look for below ground, that's the archaeology. So we surveyed that whole property. This entire property outlined in red. We did an archaeological survey on there and didn't find anything of significance. And around the house itself, it had been disturbed by modern activities and development, and the old driveway came right up here through the front yard of the house. So we didn't find any intact archaeological deposits around the house. So archaeologically, then they were allowed to go forward with the rest of the development. Finding out that this was a log house, we did a little bit of extra research, and we were able to track it backwards into the earlier 19th century and recommended that at least the log part of the house was eligible for the National Register. One, because there's only 5 other log houses, well, there may be more, but only 5 log houses in Kenton County have been documented. This would be the 6th one. There may be more that still are hiding and have not been documented. And because we can track it back, and we'll talk about that later, how far back to the earlier 19th century. And then it has to undergo documentation. And the Kentucky Heritage Council and the Corps of Engineers suggested that we come up with an agreement, and part of that agreement is that we do what's called Historic American Building Survey level documentation. And that involves documenting the building every step of the way, taking a lot of photographs, and also taking large format photographs in black and white. And we'll see some of that here in a minute. And also doing scaled drawings of the outside walls of the house once the logs were exposed, and also the inside floor plans. And we did that, and I'll have photographs of that as well. So we're going to run through right now, we're going to run through the process of the different documents that we did in terms of photographs and how the building was uncovered. All right, so the first step was removing the vinyl siding. And you can see here the vinyl siding is pretty much all gone in this photograph. And underneath of it is what's called clapboard or clapboard, and that's the horizontal boards that you see going all around the house. The vinyl siding was put on in 2019, and I have a picture here somewhere that shows what it looked like before the vinyl siding and after the clapboard. So this is a picture, and the company the contractor that was doing all the work, they did a wonderful job of very carefully removing the siding each step of the way, so that you can see the clapboard siding all the way around, and we could see how that was put on and get pictures from the different directions of that. Here's a picture of the front showing the clapboard siding, and if you can see that line coming down there, that is the break in the siding from the clapboard that was on the log part and the clapboard that they put on the addition. And then these are obviously all modern replacement windows and the outer doors of the house. Here's just some pictures during the taking off of the clapboard to expose the logs, where they're prying it off piece by piece and removing it so that we can keep everything clean all the way around the house itself. Here's the view of the front with the logs exposed, completely exposed. You can see the chinking on the front here is been plastered over. We'll have a picture where you can see the stone chinking underneath. And I don't know if you can see the white part here. This front part of the house on the first floor had been whitewashed, and also the back outside first floor had been whitewashed, and all the interior walls had been whitewashed. This was done for a number of reasons: help keep off bugs, and on the inside of the house it made it brighter on the inside of the house as well. You can see the this log chinking style is called half dovetail here, and it is very well done. You can see how tight the joints are here and how big these logs are. This is the back corner of the kitchen addition. It was interesting how they made this. They put it up in panels So you can see the big wide vertical boards. On the other side were horizontal boards that were just nailed together and created these panels to put the kitchen on the back. We think this was probably done sometime a little bit later, maybe in the 19th century. And here you can see with most of the clapboard is off, it's completely off of the log part. You can see there's the chimney. Here's the addition. The addition was made of regular, what's called balloon frame, 2x4 framing, but it was put together with cut nails. So this would have been later in the 19th century. Balloon framing is more common around here after the Civil War. Here's just another view of the house from a different angle. This is after the addition is gone. And you can see the two doorways here. This went to the second floor of the addition, and this went to the first floor of the addition. These would not have been in the original structure. They were cut out later when they put the addition up. If you look at the house, you can see the replacement windows. And I have a picture here from 1950 where you can see older window frames. In the house, there's no evidence of other windows here. There's nothing that's been filled in. So if there were windows in the original house, they either enlarged them or put them in the same place. So we had to do scaled drawings of each side of the house, and these are just the scans of the original graph paper drawings. Here we're looking at the front, and you can see how everything has been measured in, and we've got little notes and things on it. You can see all the different pieces of it. Here's another. This is the view of the chimney end, and it's not an illusion. The chimney was crooked. It wasn't completely symmetrical. This part is mortared stone. This is mortared stone in a stepped fashion, and then this upper part is brick. In the addition side, they made an effort to match this side. It's a little bit smaller chimney, but they made an effort to match it. And then here you can see the addition, frame addition on the back. This is the north or the back of the house. These little squares are just where vent pipes had been put in. The house sat on stone piers. So here are the corner piers, and then on each side there was a stone pier in the center of the house. And whether the original house had a doorway on this side or not, we don't know, but this is what the later doorway that went from the log part into the kitchen looked like. This is the addition side with the addition off. And again, you can see the piers underneath. And out here under the addition, there was a stone small basement or cellar under the addition. These are floor plans of the inside. These dotted lines are just our measuring grids. This is the log part over here. So that's the only original part. This is the addition, the two-story addition over here, stairs to the second floor. This is the kitchen. This was a back porch that had been framed in. This is the doors down into the cellar. And then there's the bathroom and then the back door. So when we're looking at the house itself, these are the openings that we see. This is the second floor, and our graph paper is not crooked. The house was crooked. So it had shifted. It's called out of plumb. So that the house had started to turn a little. So it was because our drawing line goes straight across. This is our photographer. His name is Miles Wolf. He's a retired, well-known Cincinnati photographer. Brought his large format camera out of retirement. Here he is with the hood over his head, taking some pictures of the house. And this is one of the black and white photographs that we took where the addition was still standing. Here's a nice shot of the front of the house in black and white. Here's another shot looking at the rear of the house and the east side where the addition had been. Here's a close-up of one of the corners showing the notching. This is the southwest corner. This is just a view of the end chimney end of the house, showing the log that was saved and donated to the Erlanger Elsmere Historical Society, and it will be displayed at the Elsmere City Building. It's at the Elsmere Community Center right now, but it will be on display. And that log, if I can, let me zoom in. Hold on, back. There we go. That log is almost 2 feet tall. So it's like 23 inches tall. It's about 8 inches thick, hand hewn on all sides. It is an American beech. And we took a slice off the end of the log on this end of the log after we'd taken it out. And we sent it to the forestry department at University of Kentucky. And they came back and told us that it is an American beech. And I can read you what he said. The American beech was grown under intense competition. Growth rings are an indication of rainfall and climate, as well as light environment, and even release from nearby trees coming down. Fire scars indicate when wildfires occurs. They didn't see any wildfire evidence. He says, size is a very poor measure of age. I have aged 8-inch white oak trees that were 110 years old and 25-inch white oak trees that were 40. Another tree in the county will not be helpful, even if they're the same species and size. We had asked him if we could do tree ring dating on this log. And what he's explaining is that it's very probable that the beech was sawn from virgin pre-European forest from the tight growth rings, although he won't swear to that. And he said that it is 163 years old when it was cut. So it was a good size older tree when it was cut. It probably came out of Bullock Pen Creek bed. If it's American beech, it would have been from close to the creek. And we're hoping that him thinking that it's old growth, that it helps us substantiate our early 19th century possibilities for this house. But you can see just looking at it how large these logs are. It only took 1, 2, 3, 4 logs to get 4 or 5, well, that's about halfway through to get to the top of the first floor. Here are some more views of the house in color, just showing the different angles. That's a modern shingle roof on top. The entire roof system had been replaced in the later 20th, early 21st century. Here's just some more views. Here you can see the whitewash on the north side of the house. And these logs on the top half of the north side are much darker wood. Those went with the person taking the building, so we couldn't cut those. But looking at some fresher cuts in here, these might have been either oak or maybe even walnut, as dark as they are, because they didn't weather gray. All the rest of these have weathered kind of a brownish gray. This is a view inside. We uncovered the fireplace. It's stone all the way around. It had been bricked up to create a flue for a stovepipe, which you see here. The original mantle was gone, but it was stone chimney. And here you get a really good view of just how big these logs are. Here's another view of that same wall with all of the interior coverings removed. So you can see the logs all the way around. You can see the hand-hewn floor joists. Each one had a little stone pillar underneath of it. And here is a big a stone platform in front of the hearth to form the front hearth area. All of these are later. So the entire second floor, the base of the second floor is all modern dimensional cut lumber. So this is not original. We've been leaning toward thinking that this was probably a one-story cabin to begin with, and that a second floor was added, but this floor is much later than that. Here's another really good view of the floor joists, which are, some of them at least appear to be original. Here, looking out the front door. Just some more views of the inside of the house. You can see the whitewash on these walls very clearly. This is from the second floor looking down the stairs. So the stairs are like right in here. This is the modern second floor that was put on. We've been wondering if we've got some indication of several different openings for joists. So we're guessing that the second floor was either raised up or lowered somehow during its lifetime. And you can see that oops, go back. All modern joists and roofing up in the second floor rafters. This is the second floor. This is looking, here's the stairs. And then that doorway would have gone into the addition. All right, so this is a picture from 1950, and we'll start with some historical background now. I wanted to show you this because you can see the windows were originally 6/6 sash wood frame windows, and this is the siding that was on before the vinyl siding, and that's actually asbestos shingles, which was really common mid-20th century. This is a List family wedding photo from 1950. And when I gave the talk at the Erlanger Elsmere Historical Society, the bride in this photo was at the presentation. So John B. List, grandfather of the current owner in the family trust, bought the land around the log house from William Fetters, February 28th, 1936. They did most of the later improvements to the house, and then the modern family put the vinyl siding on. Fetters had purchased the land through a Kenton County commissioner-ordered sale, December 1934, of land owned by Sarah Lusher. John and Sarah Lusher had owned the land, but Sarah had to sell after John's death. Sarah and John bought it from Barbara Shaben in 1920. She bought it from F.D. and Ruth Turner in 1917. And the Turners bought it and then turned around and sold it right away. They got it from a woman named Leona Stevens, and she inherited it from her father. W.H. Baker. And Baker had bought it from a man named Jacob Rice in 1898. And Jacob got it from his father, Caleb Rice, for 152 acres in 1885. And hold on, I can't. There we go. All right. There we go. Okay. This is the 1910 census enumeration kind of a map. It's available through Kenton County Public Library. And you can see the arrow is pointing to the log house location, and it says J.D. Stevens. And there's an Albert Rice up there. I put the red line in. That's roughly Garvey Road. It did not exist then. So Garvey Road did not exist. At the time, New Buffington Road, which would be down here, didn't exist. Old Buffington Station Road, which no longer exists, ran through the woods through there. And if you see, this Buffington Road continued on over into Florence. And at the time, this is called Rice Creek Road. Had many other names. It ran the creek and also ran into Florence, and we'll see where in just a minute. Keep this little house and this house in mind, because we'll be talking about it again shortly. All right. So here is roughly Garvey Avenue, approximately. Here's Block Pen Creek, comes across, comes down right here. Here's Jacob Rice's house, comes over here to what, Garvey now continues down here. This is Caleb Rice's house. And I've matched up the two. Kenton County and Boone County were right at the line here. This is the Kenton-Boone line. This road continued on in and became Banklick Street in Florence. And this lower road continued on, and I believe it's Manderley Drive that comes into US 25. We're going to sit here just for a minute. So Caleb Rice, whose house is here. Caleb was born, and this comes from a history of the state of Kentucky by Perrin. He said, Caleb Rice was born on the farm where he now resides in 1805 and was the son of Benjamin and Betsy Tinsley Rice. They lived a little bit further to the south, but he owned all of that property in there. So they moved here about 1790. Caleb Rice was in 1887, was the only surviving member of this family. He was brought up on the farm, received his education in the common schools, followed farming and stock dealing all his life, and regarded as one of Kenton County's most substantial farmers. At one time, he owned upward of 700 acres, but has divided the same among his children and now owns 185 acres. He built his present residence, a beautiful two-story brick in 1848, and that's the house that the arrow points to. Caleb had purchased 72 acres from his father, Benjamin Rice, in 1831. Caleb Mary's first house location is unknown, but I'm guessing it's right there where the brick house was built. Between 1831 and 1878, Caleb Rice made approximately 41 land purchases, although those include some duplicates where sellers gave quitclaim deeds, all in the vicinity of our project area where the log house is. He combined the land into one large farm, as we noted earlier, and then he began to divide the land among his children. And Jacob Rice got the current project area where the log house is located. Many of Caleb's purchases were of smaller parcels of 6 to 30 or more acres. One group of purchases was from land owned by a man named John McGlasson. After McGlasson's death in 1832, Caleb Rice bought all of the pieces broken out by McGlasson's probate. One of those parcels is of particular interest as the deed mentions a house and a lane. So we're going to start talking about the McGlassons now, and we're going to start at the beginning of the McGlassons. And we're going to stay on this slide, I think, for just a little bit so you can keep looking at that map to keep yourselves oriented. John McGlasson was born in 1767, and his wife Nancy, also born in 1767. They lived in Buckingham County, Virginia in the 18th century. And a lot of this information comes from his Revolutionary War pension record because he was a Revolutionary War veteran. All right. John served as a private in the Army of the United States during the Revolutionary War between 1780 and 1781. He was very young when he was wounded at the Battle of 96 in South Carolina. John and Nancy married August 27, 1785, and lived in Virginia through the 1810 census record. Based on ancestry records, they had 10 children, born between 1786 and 1802. John and Nancy moved to Kentucky and finalized a purchase of 228 acres in the project area vicinity on July 27, 1819, from the heirs of a man named Robert Johnson. In the deed, it says that Robert Johnson and John McGlasson had made a contract for McGlasson to buy the land during Johnson's lifetime, and Johnson died in 1815. So that puts them on that property before 1815. And we did tax record search, and we can place them in Campbell County by 1813. So we had originally thought 1819, but now we're kind of hoping we can push this back to maybe having the house built around 1813. They probably moved here right around after the end of the War of 1812. And at some time in that time period signed a contract with Robert Johnson for the deed. Robert Johnson and John D. Watkins were two of the original land grant holders in this vicinity, receiving a land grant of 2,200 acres circa 1785. There's no evidence that either one of them lived on anywhere in this vicinity. They actually lived elsewhere. The 1819 deed mentions Benjamin Rice as an adjacent landowner, who's Caleb's father. So we're pretty certain this is the same property. In 1820, in the census records, we have John and Nancy. We have one daughter under 10, two 10 to 16, and Nancy herself, and two enslaved persons, one young man 14 to 26 and a woman 26 to 45. 1830 census, one of their married children is living with them. Several of their other sons are still there. There were no enslaved persons in that particular census. He died October 10th, 1832. All right, so this is just a picture of the farm, showing how it was laid out. That's Pen Creek in the background. Okay. So I'm going to read a little bit of John McGlasson's will, which we found in the Campbell County records, because remember, before 1840, Kenton County was part of Campbell County. All right, so we're doing all right on time. In the name of God, amen. I, John McGlasson of the county of Campbell and state of Kentucky, being sick and weak in body, but of sound mind and disposing memory, for which I thank God, and being desirous to dispose of such worldly estate as it hath pleased God to bless me with, does give and bequeath my estate in the following manner. First, I give and bequeath my wife Nancy McGlasson all my estate, both real and personal, for enduring her natural life, and after her death to be divided in the following manner among such as my children, to wit, now be named. I give my daughter Nancy Brooke, wife of Benjamin Brooke, 30 acres of my land to be laid off beginning at Caleb Rice's corner, near the north of my lane and running south said lane so as to include the building or house which are now occupied by me as my residence, and thence on to a name I can't read, to include the said 30 acres. And then he gives to his other children, William, James, Rhonda, Patsy, and Elizabeth, the balance of land. They have equal interest in. Granddaughter Elizabeth Doyle gets 1 bed and 1 cow. To son-in-law Alexander Doyle, husband of my late daughter Judea, I give 50 cents. And then to the 4 daughters, they get to divide up the personal estate, excepting, however, the cow and bed disposed of previously. So that's his will. And then we have a lot of very interesting and good information that comes from their pension record. So he applied for a pension in 1829, in which he talked about his time at the Battle of 96 and when he had served, and that he had been injured in the shoulder, and a doctor examined him and said that he still had some disability from that injury in his shoulder, and that he was entitled to 1/2 of a pension under the disability, and so he ended up getting $4 a month. I haven't looked at what that equivalent was of today, but $4 a month. And then he died in 1832. In 1836, there was a law passed that allowed the widows of Revolutionary War veterans to apply for a pension if they were widowed, and so she did. And so several people gave testimony, including a woman who was like 88 years old when she gave her testimony, and she said that she had known them for over 50 years, Rebecca McNeil, and that she testified that John McGlasson and Nancy McGlasson were married and that had been living as husband and wife. And this is because Nancy says she further declares that she was married to said John McGlasson on the 27th day of August, 1785. Her husband died on the 13th day of October, 1832. She has remained a widow ever since that period, etc. She further declares that she has not in her possession, nor does she know or believe there is one in existence, a family record of the marriage between herself and the said John McGlasson, and nor the births of their children, sworn and described on this day, September 24th, 1839. And Mary Hamilton, 88, gave testimony that yes, they were definitely married. And so she got $60 a year as her pension. Now, it said that she was given all this land and everything for her lifetime, but in 1832, and for the next year or two after that, they sold all the property. At least 2 of the children who were married had moved to Grant County. And I found an online record that said that she had moved to Grant County to live with her children. And so they sold all of this land, and they pretty much sold all of it to Caleb Rice. And so we're pretty sure that we're in the right place and we have the right property. And so in summary, then, we're pretty sure that John McGlasson and his family built at least the first floor of this house, hopefully around 1813. And based on what the Forestry Department at UK has told us and the size of the logs, it certainly dates to the early 19th century. And then Caleb Rice and his son Jacob took over the property and did at least some of the improvements. Caleb Rice is very likely the one that put the addition onto the east side of the house. It's the right time frame based on the type of construction. The additions on the back, some of that went on probably at the same time, maybe in the early 20th century. And then the List family did the rest of the additions on the back, put the bathroom in and closed in the back porch, put on the new roof. and then eventually the different types of siding on the house. And I think I am ready to answer some questions.
Well, thank you so much, Jeannine. I know that I did see some questions. Heather, do you want to go ahead and read some of those for us?
Yeah, the first one was if there was any evidence that it was a slave cabin.
No, this, I mean, it's very possible they had, in the early census records, they had two enslaved persons. They may have lived in the house with them, or they may have had a separate building out in a different spot. I mean, we were told that there had been a summer kitchen at some point, which would have been a separate building. We don't know how old it was. It was replaced by a garage. So there was nothing left of that. So they either would have slept in this house. The subsequent owners were not slave owners. So the Rices were not. So very possible, but this was certainly, you know, the residence of the owner of the land. Oh, and I forgot to mention that I didn't put in a lot of the dismantling pictures. I've got some video, but I couldn't figure out how to make it work. Every log was tagged and the house was dismantled one log at a time. And it was then safely removed to another private property that I don't know where it is, but the person who moved it was born and raised in Elsmere. So in case people are asking about that. Okay. Oh, do you want to do the trivia thing real quick?
Oh, yeah, we can do the trivia. So just to repeat the trivia question, it was how old was the log when cut that will be displayed in the Elsmere City building? And that answer was 163 years old. And congratulations to Jacob who won that. There were so many guesses, and quite a few were very, very close. So congratulations, Jacob. Your prize will be coming in the mail.
Excellent.
Yeah, I loved following that, seeing everyone's guesses.
So our next question was asking, were the owners the original settlers on the property?
The current owners, no. When the McGlasson sold the property, they all left. That branch of the McGlasson family left the county, as far as we can tell. And the Rices who owned it next are not related to the List family. So it's a totally different family.
And then somebody was asking when the last time was that somebody actually lived in the building.
Maybe 3 years ago, 2 years ago. The family lived there obviously from 1936 on. I'm not sure when they stopped living there, but it was being rented to other family members up until it went under contract to be sold. So it had been empty only maybe less than 2 years.
And then the next question is, what are some similarities and differences to other log cabins that have been found in Kenton County?
Ooh, great question. So the half dovetail notching is a very common style of notching in this area. And I mean, most of the houses are half dovetail, so that's similar. The chinking, we can't really get a good picture of it. The original chinking is rocks. So they would get lots of small limestone and you would lay them in there at an angle. And then you would either make a lime plaster or clay and mud and put some straw or horsehair in that. And then you stuff that into the chinking cracks to seal that up. That is very common around here. You don't see it necessarily all over Kentucky or, everywhere, but it's very common in northern Kentucky to have limestone as the base of the chinking And then later someone had put, you can see the plaster. Someone had plastered. Here's some of it here too. Had put in a plaster that helped seal it even better. And I don't have any pictures because we're still analyzing, but we pulled probably 15 pieces of fabric out of the chinking, where, like, say a little piece of chinking had fallen out, and they had stuffed chinking in fabric into it. And one of our employees is documenting that and analyzing to try to see if we can put a time frame on them. The stone chimney is pretty common. This may or may not have been the original chimney. It's pretty good stonework. So we're speculating that it may not be original to, 18 teens. But stone chimneys are pretty common, and having to brick. So it's pretty similar to the other ones. And there are only 5 known in Kenton County. Now, in Boone County, there's at least 80 log buildings still standing in Boone County. So we've got a pretty good database to compare to that are local. Okay.
And what would the roof have been made of if it was original?
The earliest one would have been probably just logs or branches that would have come to a point. It may or may not have had a center ridge pole, and they would have either ripped boards or cut what they call shakes, which are just the big rectangular flat pieces of wood, and then those would have been nailed on. You would nail then horizontal beams and then nail those, and that would have 95% sure that would have been the original. Later on, this probably was not even the second roof on the house. Later on, it would have had sawn lumber and better wooden shingles, and then the regular asphalt shingles put on in the 20th century.
So someone said that they live in Sanders and that their 98-year-old neighbor, who was raised on the street and raised their children on the street, mentioned that a large part of the street was a dairy farm and that they can walk to the end of the street to that farm, and asked if it could be possible if their home and land was part of the original 700 acres.
Possibly, yes. I mean, this was a dairy farm in the 20th century. I don't think it was a dairy farm before that, but John List, when he bought it, the people before them had been turning it into a dairy farm, and the Lists also ran it as a dairy farm. So this may be the dairy farm that they're talking about. There were other dairy farms in the vicinity. I mean, the 700 acres would have gone from the creek on the north. I can go backwards. So the original property, the original 700 acres, here's the creek, and it probably went over here. I don't know if it went into Kenton County, but Caleb Rice's property was all of this. And down here below, down here further, I can't move. Yeah. His property went all the way down to New Buffington Road. So it was a big chunk of that. So if there was a dairy farm other than this one on Garvey, south of below Penn Creek, it was probably part of the same original property. Yep.
Jeannine, could you mention again what happened to the log cabin now? Because we've had quite a few comments, some people that might have missed it, because some have asked who paid for the restoration.
Oh, okay.
Now it's in the hands of a private person.
All right. The developer paid for all the documentation. They paid for the contractors to carefully take off all the siding, all of the coverings, all of the additions. The developer paid for it to be dismantled log by log. So everything that was done on the property itself was paid for by the developer. The person taking the building, and I have no idea if there was a financial arrangement other than what I know about between the person who took the logs and the developer. Because none of this happened until after the property closed, right? So until the developer actually owned the property. And then they have paid for everything, and they're paying for all the research. The person who is taking the log building, once it left the property, it became his responsibility. So he paid for the truck to come and get the logs, and then he took it to private property, and it will be rebuilt. It may not necessarily look exactly the same as how it came down, because the logs, hold on, won't let me go forward. There we go. Backwards, 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 backwards. Okay. You see all that? That's all rotten. So that's all water damage and bug insect damage, and these logs as well, these little short pieces. So he won't be able to use most of the logs on this side of the house because they're not usable anymore. So but every log was tagged, and so that he can try to put it back up, but it will be reconstructed as a log house. It may end up being one story just because of what logs he'll be able to physically use that are still in good condition. Because most of the logs, these logs are all in really good condition, and these logs are all in really good condition because they were covered by additions. So they've been protected for 150 years from the weather. But it will be put back up on private property, and the new owner has requested to be anonymous, just for privacy's sake. And everyone's agreed to that.
Thank you for clarifying all that.
Sure.
So our next question was, is there any information that the owners who put siding on knew that what was underneath?
Yes, they knew it was log.
And
Yes.
then someone else asked that they had thought that you mentioned that the original family was from Virginia, and was wondering if the style of cabin can be traced back to the log houses from Virginia.
Mostly this style of log house is considered like Pennsylvania Dutch, but just because of the tradition of building log buildings. But they built them in Virginia too. So I think that the idea and the technology and you know, that basic know-how of how to use the right tools had to have been pretty common knowledge, because they almost all are built the same way. You know, almost every log house in the Ohio Valley is built this way, no matter where the people came from. So they had to have all been sharing that information.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like a big barn raising kind of a thing, you know, all the neighbors get together, if there were neighbors. Probably weren't too many neighbors back then, but you know, adult sons to help, I guess.
And we had a comment on Facebook that said that Rice was a common name that the owner of Bluegrass Quality Meats on Crescent Spring Road in Erlanger had, that started in 1867 when the Rice family started creating quality meats, and they were wondering if the Rice family that owns Bluegrass is related to the Rice family that lived on this farm.
Possible. They had like 9 children. I know for a fact that Rice Pike, which it runs between Big Bone Road, because I live on Big Bone, that runs between Big Bone Road and US 42 is named for this family, and there is a cemetery on Route 536. That's the Rice Union Cemetery, and that's named for this family. So they did spread over into Boone County. So it's very possible. I don't know them.
We had one more question, wondering how it was possible that someone knew that or thought that there was something significant like under the siding of the cabin.
I think I had mentioned that when I first went out there, when you look at a lot of old buildings, there are things in your head, and when you look at something, you just kind of know. And like I said, I walked up onto that front porch, and anytime, if it's not a brick house, and you walk up on a front porch and the window wells are a foot deep, then you can be pretty sure that it's probably a log house inside, whatever the outside covering is. Because regular houses the walls aren't that thick. I mean, unless it's a brick house, and you're going to know that. So, but otherwise, you start getting suspicious when you look at it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I just wanted to add too that we've gotten some great feedback about how wonderful of a presentation this has been.
Thank you.
One, Nora said she wanted to express her deep gratitude to you all for investigating this property and preserving the memory of this cabin. She grew up down the road on Garvey at 1838. She loved walking past the farm as a little girl and was heartbroken to see the land torn up. So.
Great. Well, there'll be a display at some point in the Elsmere City building. So.
Wonderful. Okay, if that's all, Heather, we can go ahead and wrap up. We do have, I know we're a little over time, but we do have some promotions that are important to make sure we address before we go. As many of you probably know today, if you're on social media at all today is Giving Tuesday. So millions around the world are giving back, spreading kindness, showing how together we can be a force for good. We're asking that you show your support for BCM by making a donation. Your donation helps us preserve the regional history of Northern Kentucky for future generations and makes programs like tonight's possible. So anything that you're able to give would be greatly appreciated. You can donate online on our website at www.bcmuseum.org/support-us/donate, or go to our website and just go bcmuseum.org and click on donate in the middle of the page. It's probably a little easier, but we would very much appreciate it. And to keep with the spirit of giving, keep that going, we've partnered with the Emergency Shelter of Northern Kentucky with a donation collection of much needed items for those experiencing homelessness. So from now through January 7th during Holly Jolly Days, museum guests are encouraged to donate scarves, toilet paper, paper towels, boxes of cereal, and disposable silverware in a collection bin located in the front lobby. So as I said, Holly Jolly Days is now open. So that features our beloved holiday toy trains, a window through time that has vintage feather Christmas trees, antique German ornaments, toys, and more donated by Mary and Pat Ashcraft. And then we also have our Winter Wonderland, BCM's outdoor holiday light show that winds through Nature Place. That's open now through January 7th. This Saturday, December 2nd, is City of Erlanger Day. So from 10 until 2 o'clock, residents of Erlanger will receive free admission with proof of residency. This is sponsored by the City of Erlanger. We will also have family fun holiday activities in the Education Center that are included with museum admission. You can see all of our upcoming city days on our website at bcmuseum.org. You can also see a list of all the fun activities there that we have planned for this season, but we also want to make sure that you mark your calendar for December 3rd, because from 2 to 3, book illustrator Christina Wald will be reading The Train Rolls On to the North Pole. And this is a book that she illustrated. You might remember Christine as she was a guest on our last Northern Kentucky History Hour. So tune into that. I said Christine, it's Christina. My bad. I'm sorry, Christina. And lastly, there will not be a Northern Kentucky History Hour during the month of December, but we will return next year. On January 9th, we will have Stuart Sanders. He'll be speaking about his book, Anatomy of a Duel, Secession, Civil War, and the Evolution of Kentucky Violence. So please be sure to tune in to that. For more Northern Kentucky history throughout the week, check out our Facebook page and our YouTube channel, where you can find the latest installment of Curator's Chat, along with all of our past Northern Kentucky History Hour presentations. Please like and subscribe. That is all that we have time for this evening, so thank you again to all of the sponsors and supporters of BCM. Until next time, take care, everyone, and good night. Thank you, Heather. Thanks, Jeannine. Have a great night.